Laughter. Love. Lies. The Honeymooners looked like the heartbeat of American comedy. But the truth was darker than anyone imagined. One woman lost everything to politics. One man walked away from fame at his peak. And the network that owed them everything acted like they never existed. These 11 revelations will make you question every laugh you ever heard. Fact 1. The actress who was secretly blacklisted and vanished overnight. Pert Kelton, the woman who gave the Honeymooners its first heartbeat, walked into CBS Studio 51 Friday, filmed a sketch, laughed with the crew, and by Monday her name had vanished from every call sheet. Executives claimed she was ill. What they didn't say was that her husband, actor Ralph Bell, had been quietly flagged by the House Un-American Activities Committee. He'd attended a labor rally in 1948. Someone took his photograph. That grainy photo landed in a file labeled Communist Sympathizer. The studio panicked. Sponsors were terrified of bad press. Buick executives sent CBS a direct warning. No red affiliations or we pull funding. Within 24 hours, Pert Kelton was removed. She spent the following months wandering between hotel rooms and small theaters, performing under fake names in New Jersey and Connecticut. Her only audience was a handful of locals who had no idea they were watching a woman once seen by 40 million Americans. Jackie Gleason wanted to bring her back, but CBS lawyers threatened to blacklist him if he resisted. "It's business, Jackie," one executive told him. "She's radioactive." By the time she was quietly invited back for a 1958 Gleason variety special, her career was in ruins. Gleason handed her a sealed envelope before taping. Inside was a single note. "Welcome home, Alice." She cried backstage, then performed without a single mistake. Fact 2. The secret that destroyed Jackie Gleason's marriage during filming. It looked like a fairy tale on camera. The loud husband, the clever wife, the laughs rolling in every Saturday night. Behind those studio walls, though, Jackie Gleason's life was falling apart faster than the set walls he used to punch during rehearsals. By 1955, his marriage to Genevieve Halford was a ghost of what it had been. She had known him when he was broke, sleeping on bar stools between club gigs. But fame changed everything. Gleason was drinking more, gambling on poker nights that lasted until sunrise, and surrounding himself with hangers-on who called him the Great One, even when he could barely stand. Genevieve begged him to slow down. She sent handwritten letters to CBS, pleading for lighter filming schedules. "He's killing himself for the camera," she wrote. Executives dismissed her concerns as domestic trouble. On set, rumors started circulating that Gleason was getting too close to Audrey Meadows. There was never proof of an affair, but he confided in her constantly. Meadows later said she saw the sadness he couldn't drink away. For Genevieve, that emotional intimacy was betrayal enough. Their fights became legendary. Once, during a dinner at the Waldorf, Gleason reportedly flipped a table when Genevieve refused to move to Miami with him. He shouted, "Television is my wife now." That line ended up paraphrased in a later sketch. By early 1956, she'd filed for separation, accusing him of cruelty and neglect. CBS intervened, terrified of scandal, and offered her financial compensation if she delayed the divorce until filming ended. She accepted. When the final episode aired that September, she left New York for good with their daughters. Fact 3. The rivalry between Jackie Gleason and Art Carney that almost ended the show. If you'd been backstage at Studio 50 in 1955, you'd have felt a quiet war disguised as laughter. Gleason and Carney, America's favorite comedy duo, were locked in a rivalry so tense that crew members nicknamed their dressing room hallway the DMZ. It started innocently. Gleason was earning $11,000 a week. Carney, whose timing made half the jokes land, was paid less than half that. When the show became a hit, Carney's agent demanded parity. CBS refused. Gleason said nothing, but from that day on, every rehearsal turned into a test of dominance. Gleason began rewriting scenes at the last minute, stealing punchlines meant for Carney. Carney fought back in the only way he could, by outacting him live. In one notorious broadcast, Gleason flubbed a line, and Carney improvised a comeback so sharp the audience roared for 30 seconds straight. Gleason's face froze. After the show, he smashed a prop chair and shouted, "He'll never upstage me again!" Their friendship collapsed. They wouldn't speak off camera for months. One night, a physical confrontation nearly broke out when Carney refused to cut a joke Gleason wanted deleted. The producer, Jack Philbin, stepped between them, saying, "If you two swing, this network dies tonight." Carney eventually threatened to quit. CBS offered him a raise. Gleason countered by demanding script approval over everything. The compromise kept the show alive, but hollowed their trust. Fact 4. The secret code the cast used to save Gleason live on air. Everyone remembers Gleason's booming confidence, but the crew had a secret they swore never to reveal. Jackie was terrified of forgetting his lines. He refused to rehearse, claiming it killed the soul. To survive, the cast invented a silent language. Audrey Meadows came up with the first signal. If Gleason froze mid-sentence, she'd tap her wedding ring twice on the table, tap, tap, warning Art Carney to step in. Carney would then launch into a comic ramble about the sewers or bowling leagues to buy Gleason time to recover. Studio sound engineers joined the conspiracy. They learned to shift audience mics slightly to cover pauses. When Gleason's hands started twitching, his cue for help, they'd crank up laughter from the previous take, giving him 15 precious seconds to find the next line. During the live episode The Wages of Sin, Gleason went blank during a 3-page monologue. Meadows caught it instantly, tapped the table, and Carney slid across the set in character, pretending to fix a radiator. It became one of the most beloved moments in the series. Stage manager Frank O'Neill later admitted they kept cue cards hidden inside props, a grocery list taped to the fridge, a folded newspaper printed with real dialogue. "We were saving a drowning man without the audience ever knowing," he said. The code lasted the entire run of the show. Gleason knew about it, but never acknowledged it. Years later, he told a friend, "They were my safety net, and I pretended I didn't need one." Fact 5. The actress who died 1,000 times before becoming Trixie. Before Joyce Randolph became America's sweetheart as Trixie Norton, she had already died on television more than anyone in the business. Between 1949 and 1952, she was Hollywood's favorite corpse. She kept count, 24 on-screen deaths in 3 years. Shot 14 times, poisoned twice, strangled 4, thrown from windows, even drowned in a bathtub for suspense theater. By 1952, her nickname around New York casting offices was the girl who never survives the first act. When Jackie Gleason saw her in a chewing gum commercial, he reportedly laughed and said, "Get me the murder victim. She's got timing." No one believed she'd fit into a comedy. CBS executives called her too cold for a housewife role, but Gleason insisted, "She's got that toughness. The kind you get when you've been killed a few times." During her first rehearsal as Trixie, she was so nervous, she forgot to laugh at one of Gleason's jokes. And that silence worked. Gleason later said, "That look on her face, like she'd seen it all and still showed up. That's Trixie." She also wrote her own one-liners into scripts, gave Trixie the job of bookkeeper to show she was smart, and convinced Gleason to let her challenge Norton instead of idolizing him. After the Honeymooners, she just retired quietly. Fact 6. The night Jackie Gleason snapped on live TV and nobody laughed. It started like every other Saturday night. Bright lights, a roaring crowd, and Jackie Gleason. He walked onto the stage of the Adelphi Theater with his usual swagger, cigar in hand, that Brooklyn grin lighting up the room. But halfway through the deciding vote, something shifted. The laughter that had always followed him suddenly didn't come. When Gleason leaned toward Audrey Meadows and hissed, "Bang! Zoom! Straight to the moon!" The line sounded like a threat. The audience froze. Behind that silence was a storm nobody saw coming. Gleason had been spiraling for months. He was drinking heavily, sleeping 3 hours a night, and raging at anyone who dared question his control. His doctor had warned him that his blood pressure was a live wire waiting to snap. He'd begun improvising entire scenes, ignoring scripts, even yelling off stage when the cameras weren't rolling in the movie set. That night, the fuse burned out. In that moment, his voice was dropped. His jaw was locked. CBS knew instantly they had a disaster. The next morning, Buick executives called the network furious. Advertisers threatened to pull out. Letters poured in from viewers saying the show had gone too far. Inside CBS headquarters, executives debated whether to pull the plug immediately. Weeks later, without a press release, the Honeymooners was gone. Gleason never publicly spoke about that night again. But years later, an assistant recalled finding him alone in his dressing room after the show, head in his hands, mumbling, "I didn't mean to scare her. I was just tired." Fact 7. The scene CBS tried to erase from television history. There's a piece of film that CBS spent half a century pretending never existed. It was a live broadcast in February 1956 that left the control room in chaos. It later became known inside the studio as The Night Ralph Went Too Far. The episode began like any other, Ralph and Alice arguing over money. But that night, Jackie Gleason was under enormous pressure. He'd spent the day drinking scotch, furious over new sponsor notes demanding a gentler Ralph. When the cameras rolled, something in him snapped. Halfway through the scene, Gleason ignored the script. He slammed his hand against the set table so hard that the prop plates shattered. Audrey Meadows froze in real terror. Then Gleason stepped toward her and hissed through his teeth, "You ever talk to me that way again, Alice, and you'll find out what that moon looks like up close." Gasps echoed through the studio audience. Some thought it was method acting. Others felt the air change. Director Frank Sattenstein switched cameras mid-shot to Art Carney's reaction. She stood still, trembling, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. After the show ended, the CBS switchboard lit up with complaints, viewers saying it felt too real. The next morning, sponsor executives ordered the kinescope destroyed. But one film archivist, Hal Smith, made a duplicate and hid it under a false label, Commercial Test Reel 1953. Years later, Smith described watching it in private. It wasn't Ralph yelling. It was Jackie, and you could feel how much pain he was in. That reel remains locked in the CBS vault, sealed under contract. Only 3 people have seen it since the 1970s. Fact 8. The day Audrey Meadows tricked Gleason into casting her. Every actor has a moment where desperation turns into genius. For Audrey Meadows, it happened at 6 a.m. in her kitchen. Hair in curlers, cold coffee on the counter, a photographer setting up his tripod. She was about to commit career suicide, or rewrite television history. Gleason had already rejected her for the role of Alice Cramden. "Too glamorous," he said, tossing her headshot aside. Meadows didn't argue. She went home, stripped off her makeup, put on an old robe with a missing button, and staged a photo shoot designed to make her unrecognizable. The pictures showed exhaustion. Dark circles, frizzy hair, a chipped teacup in one hand. She mailed them overnight to Gleason's office with no note attached. 2 days later, he called the casting director, shouting, "Find this woman! She's perfect!" He had no clue it was the same actress he'd turned down. When she arrived for rehearsal, Gleason burst out laughing. "You tricked me," he said. "I thought you were one of my neighbors." She fired back, "That's exactly what Alice is." He hired her on the spot. But the story didn't end there. CBS executives initially objected, claiming her contract demanded too high a fee for a housewife role. Gleason personally paid her difference from his own salary for the first 3 episodes. Her transformation changed the show's tone. Meadows' grounded warmth softened Gleason's volcanic energy, turning what could have been a shouting match into believable marriage comedy. Fact 9. The apartment address that revealed Jackie Gleason's secret past. Ralph and Alice Cramden lived at 328 Chauncey Street. Most viewers never thought twice about that address. But for Jackie Gleason, it was home. In 1925, a 10-year-old Gleason lived just down the block at 364 Chauncey Street in Brooklyn's Bushwick neighborhood. His father, Herbert, worked as an insurance clerk. His mother, May, ironed shirts for neighbors to make rent. Then one morning, Herbert packed a small suitcase, kissed his son on the forehead, and walked out. He never came back. That wound never healed. When Gleason created the Honeymooners, he built Ralph Cramden's world from those same streets. The sound of traffic outside the window, the creak of floorboards, the cramped kitchen, it all came from that apartment in Brooklyn where he learned what abandonment felt like. He once told a writer, "Everything Ralph says, I heard my mother say to my father before he left." That's why the Honeymooners felt different from other sitcoms. It wasn't fantasy. It was memory disguised as comedy. He never spoke publicly about his father, but years later, when a journalist asked him if Ralph Cramden was based on a real man, Gleason replied quietly, "He's the man who never came home." When the first episode aired, some of his old Brooklyn neighbors recognized the address and wrote letters saying they'd watched the real Ralph Cramden grow up. That apartment number wasn't a set detail. It was a confession. Fact 10. The one actress who outsmarted CBS and became a millionaire. Everyone on the Honeymooners was underpaid, except Audrey Meadows, who played Alice Cramden, was the only cast member to receive residuals for reruns. She wasn't a lawyer, but her brothers were. When CBS sent over her contract in 1952, her brother Edward read it and said, "They're going to make a fortune rebroadcasting this. You should too." He inserted a clause demanding that she be paid every time any footage featuring her aired, resold, or syndicated. The network executives signed it without question. Everyone laughed, even Gleason. He told her, "Residuals? Honey, this show won't rerun for 3 weeks decades later." When the Honeymooners began airing endlessly in syndication and on late-night marathons, Meadows was receiving checks that dwarfed her old weekly salary. By the 1970s, she'd made over $2 million purely from reruns. The others? Nothing. Carney once joked bitterly, "I should have hired her lawyer." Gleason called it a smart play, though privately he was furious. He tried to renegotiate his own deal, but CBS wouldn't budge. The rights belonged to her forever. That one contract changed television. It forced the Screen Actors Guild to reevaluate how performers were paid for re-airings, leading to the residual system every TV actor benefits from today. Fact 11. The day Jackie Gleason walked away from fame forever. The last night Jackie Gleason filmed The Honeymooners didn't feel like history being made. It felt like a man saying goodbye to himself. The audience inside Studio 50 had no clue this was it. Gleason did. He'd made up his mind hours earlier, staring at a half-burned cigar and a script he couldn't bring himself to open. Gleason had been unraveling for months. His blood pressure hovered near crisis level. He'd suffered 2 panic attacks on set. The live format he once loved now felt like a trap. "I'm dying every Saturday," he told a friend. CBS kept pushing for more episodes, more sponsors, more everything. Gleason wanted silence. After the final scene that night, Ralph and Alice reconciling over burnt dinner, the applause thundered. Gleason bowed once, looked at Meadows, and whispered, "We did all we could." Then he walked straight through the stage door and never came back. The crew waited the next week for rehearsals that never happened. CBS called his hotel. He'd already flown to Miami. He sent one telegram to the network. 39 is enough. Don't cheapen it. Executives begged him to reconsider. He refused. A perfect diamond doesn't need polishing, he told them later. Keep it small. Keep it clean. That was it. No finale, no farewell tour. So, after knowing all this, can you still laugh at the Honeymooners the same way? Tell us what shocked you the most in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the next secret might be even darker.